What's up, binge watchers? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I'll be talking about the Netflix fantasy show that I just finished watching, Shadow and Bone, developed by Eric Heisserer. This is based on the Shadow and Bone trilogy novels by Leigh Bardugo, along with the follow-up novel called Six of Crows. Together, this book series is often referred as the Grishaverse. Now, I don't know anything about the source material. I'm coming in blind. But the main thing that you have to know is, in this fictional world, the action is mostly set in the kingdom of Ravka, and in it, the country is at war. Our main protagonist here, Alina Starkov, played by Jessie Leigh, is part of the First Army. She is a cartographer, that is a map maker, and she discovers that she has the ability to summon light, which will be very useful and integral to the war that's happening in their country. Now, before I continue with this review, I invite you guys, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, what are you waiting for, guys? Hit that subscribe button. We do weekly reviews of movies and TV shows. And while you're at it, please give this video a like. It really helps our channel. This show has a lot of world building concepts into it. And for a non-Grishaverse reader, it might be intimidating or overwhelming at first. That is what happened for me. Episode 1, I can't seem to find the footing of this show because there's so many characters with different motivations, places that I'm not yet familiar with, and there are some terminologies here that went over my head, like the functions or the titles of the people here, because we have here the Grisha. Like, I'm gonna give you guys a quick crash course. Grishas are witches or wizards or whatever you wanna call them. They have the ability to manipulate elements or matter. There's an Inferni who can manipulate fire. There's a Squaller who can manipulate air. There's a Heartrender who can control the blood flow of your body. There's a healer, though that's already self-explanatory, and a bunch of things. There's even a tailor here who can manipulate your facial features. Initially, I have no idea what Ravka is until I've realized, oh, they're pertaining to Russia because the other country here is called Shu, which I have to assume is China. So I think by episode 2, that's when things start to settle in for me. And I guess I'm fine with that. I don't want a fantasy show that spends too much time on its expository moments, as sometimes the dialogue can be too clunky. So not in here. You're immediately thrust into their world, so it's up for you to pick up the pace and learn the schematics or learn their overall hierarchy on the social context. And I guess that's a common thing for book series when they get adapted. It might be a challenge for some viewers. Initially, I was, for lack of a better term, in the dark for what's happening because I was just confused, with all those plot lines initially introduced, and they're yet at the point where they're not yet colliding. But when you get to episode 8, that's when the payoff comes. There's just this basic acknowledgement that it's a show where darkness looms, there are mythical creatures, there are some people who can wield this power, and there are a lot of feuds. We have Ravka versus Shu, and within Ravka, there's a divide. East Ravka, West Ravka. East Ravka, I think, is trying to get access to the water, or the other way around. I'm not entirely sure. And West wants sovereignty. But the main thing that the show succeeds in its first episode is to stress the fact that the Fold is a very dangerous, that black mystical shroud. It's called the Fold. It's a very dangerous place because winged creatures hate whoever tries to pass, but at the same time, they need to do it because they need it for trade and, establishing diplomatic efforts with the other parts of this country. Now, in technical terms, this show is just handsomely produced. Netflix obviously poured a lot of money on it, and I have to commend the costume design here because everything is detailed and very well thought of, from the magicians to the royalties to the peasants. You can see that this is inspired costume designs. Even the sets, you can see that these geographical locations are modeled after some countries. The young adult elements here on the span of 8 episodes. There's espionage, there's romance, there's magic, there's monsters. A lot of ingredients that will ultimately satisfy a fantasy fan. Admittedly, I was a bit cautious prior to watching this show because it's another young adult fantasy show, and Netflix has the tendency to deliver all those checklists that is needed, those requirements, without giving justice to those elements, just like what happened to the irregulars. The end result is something that's uneven, but because this is based on a pre-existing source material and it's more faithful to that said source material, I think it has more identity. Sure, there are some parts that you've already seen before, but there are also some parts that I haven't seen in any other fantasy show. The visual effects, I think they're crisp and well done, as well as the choreography of the fight sequences. Now, our main character here, Alina, played by Jessie Leigh, she's the center of the plot for the most part. I think the actress did a well job in delivering the emotions required of her. Her arc is basically this savior trope arc, like the chosen one arc, who's reluctant at first. She's a biracial character. She's part Ravkan, she's part Shu, and she will be the recipient of some of the racism and xenophobia of the show. I think this character's main struggle has always been finding her place in this world. She feels like she doesn't belong to either of the kingdoms because of her biracial background, and add to that layer is she finally discovers that she's also a Grisha. The peasants or the Grishas are always been in conflict with each other. The peasants think that Grishas are witches that deserve to be burned. So there's another whole layer of conflict in there for Alina and her best friend Mal, played by Archie Renaux. He's the brawn of the duo, and their bond together will definitely play a key role in her manifesting her powers. I do like how the show treated their relationship. It's not really more of a will they won't they relationship. It's more of a platonic relationship with respect. And I feel like, you know, eventually in my heart, I know that they are endgame. No, I haven't read the books, but I do like that the show does not force the relationship into the next level, leaving it more time to grow for the future seasons. Now, there's also General Kerrigan, played by Ben Barnes, aka the Shadow Summoner, aka the Darkling, and he's the one who takes Alina under his wing as he trains these magicians. He's actually the head of the Second Army, which is composed of the magicians. I kept calling them magicians. Grishas. And if you know your fantasy stuff well, you know that when it comes to these types of characters, there's an ulterior motive, which we'll discover in the next episodes. I think it's on episode 6 that you will get his backstory. And I think this show does a good case in making him an intriguing and complex character, whether you're going to root for him or not. Now, is this show the next Game of Thrones? Well, it certainly delivers on a high fantasy level with all the landmarks and the requirements that are needed and the handsome production values. The only thing that I feel like it's lacking is the political intrigue. There is a surface level, I would say, when it comes to the racism and xenophobia, that racial dimension that is played for Alina. I don't really get why these two countries are at war against each other. Maybe it's mentioned partly in passing and I'm not just paying attention, but I think I would like to have a more pronounced conflict here. Why this nation is in conflict with itself. I guess I'm needing more subtlety and nuance, and maybe it has to do with this show is just 8 episodes. Personally, I prefer it with 10. Sometimes the key to a good payoff is a slow and steady build of momentum of the conflict. And sometimes things are just thrown at you and you just have to go along with it. And I was just looking for that depth. I know some of you might not agree with me and just prefer this 8 episodes because it's fast-paced. There's not a dull moment. And you know, a lot of big things are happening per episode. But in cases like this or fantasy shows like this, I always had this mindset of what would HBO do? Maybe they will build up on the plot lines first before heading into the finale. Because the scope of the story here, I can imagine Game of Thrones doing something like this for 2 seasons. But you know, I can never tell because I haven't read the source material. Now, the cast performances here are great. I think the cast is very diverse. Most prominently on the group called the Dregs. This is a trio of thieves who are mainly motivated by money. Initially, I'm not feeling their introduction in episode 1 just because we have so many things going on, and adding this group that seems to focus on heist with the vibe of Ocean's 11. I feel like it's already too much, but by the end of the season, they are very much warranted of their screen time and maybe even a spin-off series. Also, there's another subplot here involving a witch and a witch hunter, which sometimes feels not so cohesive with the overall picture until the final episode. There's some Stockholm Syndrome romance going on here between the two of them. It's borderline cringy for me, but thankfully it never really crosses that territory. But overall, these characters, no matter how disparate these storylines seem to be, they will eventually connect on the final episode. I think the narrative is filled with surprises and it became more a story of chosen families. That's the underlying theme that I got in the final episode. So overall, Shadow and Bone, I think the production values are excellent, the CGI is crisp, and the performances are all likable, young and talented stars. There is confidence in the vision and in direction, and as a viewer, that will definitely entice you to learn more about this franchise. I would be giving this season a 4 out of 5 stars. And that's it for my review of Shadow and Bone Season 1. How about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, hit that like button and subscribe to us for weekly content. Thank you so much guys for watching. Until then, see you on the next one.